In this lesson, we're going to talk about class methods. Class methods are a very useful way for modularizing your code as well as making sure that you don't have a large footprint on your memory. And they're actually very simple to use. So let's go ahead into Xcode. And in my Xcode, I'm going to have a new project, command line tool. I'm going to call it class methods Swift. And in here, I'm going to go ahead and say I have one class called class. Let's call it my class. And then this class of mine, it has only one function. That function, it doesn't really matter. It says do something and doesn't have any parameters, doesn't have any return type, doesn't have any body. We just know that this thing actually exists. Now, you know for a fact that so far, if you wanted to use this function, the only solution was this. I had to go ahead and say, let my object become my class. And then, of course, my object could do that thing, do something. Now, while there's nothing wrong with this approach, there is, however, a challenge with it. And that challenge is I have already allocated a space to my object, and that object is not going anywhere until this cycle finishes, whether we go out of this view controller or this object gets destroyed or any other way that we will talk about it in a few lessons about memory management and reference counting. But the problem is this: we have an object that we just wanted to use this method of it, but we had to actually instantiate it from that class. And that's not really a good approach. What if there was a way for us, we could only call the function without ever needing to instantiate an object for it? And that is there, and that's a very simple solution. You just convert this into a class function. And the moment it becomes a class function, it becomes a lot easier. All you have to do, you have to say my class dot do something. And then it goes and does this thing, and that's it. And there is no footprint. We haven't instantiated an object. It just runs that one function. So that's about that, class functions. In the practices that comes up, I will be using a lot of class functions. Keep in mind that whenever you felt like you are actually allocating an object just so that you can call a method, that seems like a very good place for you to try class functions instead of just functions. While we are here, I'm going to quickly redo this in Objective-C as well, because it's a little different over there. So I'm going to say class methods Objective-C, and in class methods Objective-C, as you can imagine, up here I have a class at interface, and that interface I'm going to call it my class. It is NS object, for instance, and as usual it has one function called do something, and that's about that. And of course, we have to implement it. At implementation, my class, and do something will be there as well. Now, so far, again, just like the one that we did for Swift, we have to do this. I had to go to my main saying my class. My object is going to be my class new. And then my object could call do something, which is again exactly the same thing that we did in Swift. A much easier way would be converting this to become a class method by changing its signature from a dash to a plus sign. So now that it has got a plus sign, it becomes essentially a class method, which means I could go ahead and say my class do something. And this is just going to call that function from here. That plus sign, sometimes we call it a constructor method, because that's essentially how you call methods on a class to build them. For instance, if I had ns array, my array is ns array alloc, then I had a constructor method called init with objects that returns my instance type. Here I don't return that, I just return void, but I can call that like a class method, and I can actually do something that I want to do on my class using this method. Of course, if you want to access properties from my class, those properties, they have to be static properties. And we'll talk about that in a few lessons when we talk about the reference counting. But for now, this is how you declare and define class functions in Objective-C. This is how you do it in Swift, and I shall see you in the next lesson.